Hey everybody, today we're going to be showing off how to make poison loops that are accurate to the second. So this uses a brand new feature that was just introduced. One of the new placeholders here is this date.unix, and this stores the exact time, essentially, down to the second, which is super duper useful because it means that we can actually keep our timers up to date perfectly, like perfectly in sync with actual clocks, which is really, really cool here. So this still relies on poison loops that we used previously, except it's much, much more accurate, and it basically is invincible to lag spikes or anything of that sort. So it'll always stay in sync. So how do you actually make one of these, you might ask? Well, first of all, we need to set up our poison loop just like you normally would. So we're going to go into house settings, and then we're going to go into functions here. And let's create a new function, and I'm just going to call this give poison. The first step, of course, in making a poison loop is to actually give the player poison. So in here, we're going to apply effect, poison, 259 2000, just like that. And we'll set the level between 5 and 10. I use 10 because if you have an overlay like this, it doesn't show the number anymore. Plus X is cooler than a V. And we do want to override existing effects as well here. So it'll look something like this. And we want to apply this poison effect whenever someone actually joins the housing. So let's go to event actions, player join, and we will go ahead and run our give poison function, and you can run this for everybody. This is optional, you don't have to do this. I like to do this just in case though. Alright, also to keep our functions nice and neat here, we'll give this an icon. I'll just use a poison potato here for our give poison function. Alright, up next, let's go ahead and actually create a tick function. So I'll call this tick. And this is a function that will happen every time the poison tick goes off, which is about every 0.2 seconds. But again, the main reason for using Unix time over a typical poison loop is because that's not always the case. It's not always going to be 0.2 seconds. It could be more than that. I don't think it'll ever be less than that. Usually it will be more than that. So inside of this tick function, we'll come back and we'll actually implement this in a little bit. But first, let's give this an icon. We'll give it the compass icon. And inside of our poison events, we'll go to event actions, and then player damage. We want to add an action, conditional, damage cause, and set this to poison. So every time we take poison damage, we'll go into our if actions here. We actually want to go ahead and call this tick function from here. Alright, so once we're running our tick function in here, we also need to go ahead and cancel the poison. Otherwise, your player's actually going to take poison damage, which is not something we want. So make sure to throw this cancel event in here. So that's good. That's all been set up. So inside of our function here, our tick function, we can now actually go ahead and start implementing some of these Unix time thingamabobs. Alright, before we do any of this though, let me explain how this works. So essentially what we're going to do inside of this tick function is we're going to check and see if the player's Unix time is out of sync with the actual Unix time. And if it is, we will update it by however much they're out of sync. And this way you can create super duper accurate timers and things. So to do that, we need to first add an action, conditional. And again, we need to check and see if the player's Unix stat is not equal to the date.unix placeholder. So I'll put date.unix on the right-hand side of this conditional, and on the left-hand side we have Unix. So we're checking the player's Unix stat. We're seeing if it's equal to date.unix. We want to, again, check if it's not equal. So we're going to go into else actions. This is very important. Make sure you go into else actions here. So now that we know we're in a situation where they're not equal, so we need to figure out how much our player's Unix date is behind the actual date. So if we add an action, we're going to go ahead and make a new stat. We'll call it Unix diff. We're going to go ahead and, I didn't mean to hit the 1, I meant to hit this guy. We're going to set Unix diff to date.unix as such. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and decrement by the player's local Unix stat. So we'll do stat.player/Unix as such. So now Unix diff will store the difference between date.unix and our local player stat Unix. So essentially, Unix diff now stores the number of seconds that have passed since the last update, if you will. And you can do basically whatever you want with that, but now that we have the Unix diff, we can actually go ahead and update the local Unix time, and we can set that equal to the actual Unix time, date.unix, in here. Very, very cool. And we also want to run a function, because every time this happens, a second has passed, exactly. So we haven't made the function yet, so we'll just leave this blank for just a moment here. We'll go back to our functions and make a new one, and we're going to call this loop. Again, you can call this whatever. I'm going to go ahead and give this loop the clock icon, since it happens once every second. So this function will be called once every second, exactly, basically all the time, unless there's a lag spike that lasts longer than a second, in which case your Unix diff will store the number of seconds that have passed. For example, let's say you're trying to make a pet or something that gives you, I don't know, $20 a second. You would use that Unix diff, you would multiply the $20 per second by the Unix diff to figure out how much time has passed and how much money they should get in compensation for that. So you can use the Unix diff stat to make sure that those things are updated correctly. Anyways, this loop function will run once every second. So let's come in here, and we'll do some example things in just a moment, but before we do that, let's make sure we actually go back in here and we trigger the loop function inside of our tick function. The last thing we need to do actually before any of this works is we need to make sure that poison and wither damage are enabled in here, otherwise none of this will work at all. So you have to make sure that poison and wither damage are turned on. Alright, let's go ahead and show off an example of this. We'll show off like a playtime example, just because it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So inside a loop here, we're going to go in here, and we're going to change player stat. We're going to change the player stat seconds, we'll call it, and we're going to increment it by the Unix diff stat that we talked about before. So this is stat.player/Unix diff. And this is the number of seconds since the last time loop was called. So this will always update perfectly, and it'll never get out of sync. So seconds is now being incremented. And then send a chat message or something like that as well. That has the time in it. So stat.player/seconds in this case. And this will print out whatever the timer is currently at. And there's one last thing we need to do inside of our player join function here. We actually need to go ahead and make sure that our local Unix time is set to date.unix. And what this does essentially is it makes sure that if we've been gone for, say, 2 hours, our playtime's not going to be counted as 2 hours because now we've updated our Unix time. So it doesn't have time to actually see, oh hey, our Unix time is 2 hours behind, let's update that and add 2 hours to the playtime. By adding this to the join event, we will set our local Unix time equal to the actual Unix time, and so no such update ever occurs. Alright, let's go ahead and test this now. You can see I already have poison here, just from some previous testing, but just to show you that this works, I'll go ahead and relog real quick. And you can see we still get this poison. Now if we go into adventure mode, you can see our timer is updating, and it's actually been updating since we joined the house, which is why it started at 3 instead of 0. But if you were to pull out a stopwatch, which I'll actually go ahead and do right now, just to prove this to you guys, 18, so I started it at 18, and this will be basically perfect. You could let this run for 100 years, and it should still be perfectly in sync. So we'll go ahead and stop here at, say, 38, and I'll let you guys know what my stopwatch is at here. So 34, 35, 36, 37, and 38. And my stopwatch is at exactly 20 seconds, which is what you would expect, because it went from 18 to 38 seconds. That is exactly 20, and our stopwatch reflects that. And you can even try this for yourself if you don't believe me. But yeah, this keeps perfect track of the actual time, and it always will, basically forever. So exactly 1 minute has passed since I joined the house at that 60-second mark. And obviously if you were implementing an actual playtime, you could throw in some conditionals and say, like, if seconds equals 60, decrement seconds by 60, and then increase minutes by 1, that sort of stuff. But this is just a very rough example to show you that this actually does indeed work, and kind of how to use it. So, yeah. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to, I don't know, leave a like or something. I don't really care too much. It's a tutorial. My main goal here is to, of course, help you. So hopefully this helped. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.